Hi, this is Ross Miller, and this is my qualifying exam presentation. I think first, to understand a bit about my professional growth, you need to know a little bit about my profession. In 1987, I graduated with a degree in Japanese, and soon after that I went to Japan, where I started working at an English conversation school called Berlitz, and then after a few years I ended up teaching in a high school. But that wasn't quite enough for me. I wanted to get into the universities. So I enrolled in Temple University's master's program to get the master's degree, which was the key to getting into Japanese universities. I graduated from that in January 1997, and in April I was able to pick up 2 part-time lessons at Konan University. But soon after that, I got a full-time job at Ritsumeikan University on a terminal contract, which was followed by another terminal contract at Kwansei Gakuen University. While working at Kangaku, I actively sought out tenured positions. After many, many applications, I was able to get an interview and a job as a tenured lecturer, now associate professor at Otemon Gakuen University, which is where I currently work. 20 years teaching in Japanese universities has pretty much given me a full career, but I wanted something more. And through just coincidence at a conference, I met someone, learned about the University of Florida Educational Technology EDD, applied, and here I am today. As an adult, I've always been interested in learning, and as a teacher, I've always been interested in the process of facilitating learning. As someone who remembers having to study Japanese using devices like these, I'm amazed at the potential of today's technology, and it's always made me think about how this can be incorporated to help learners. Through this program, I've learned just how much I didn't know for a lot of the time I have been teaching. I've learned to put labels on things that I had intuited and had employed in my classes. I've learned the language of scholarship and learned how to read scholarship and research with a more critical eye. I think where I've grown the most is gaining a better understanding of the different factors that can facilitate learning or hinder the learning process. Even something as basic as instructions can have a huge impact on student engagement. With these 2 examples, I've seen students stop after 7, but when they don't know how many, they keep going and they keep going. And I know for me, I found at least 12. When I started this program, I really thought it was going to teach me how to better use technology in my teaching. But it didn't take long to realize that this course really isn't about the technology. It's about understanding how learning occurs and how to reach out to students and how to engage them with my lessons and with my interaction with them. I think that's the biggest change I've gone through so far in this program. Problem number 2 had us evaluate the major foundations of educational technology. And though this should have been easy, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. To me, behaviorism isn't so much about learning knowledge, but as learning the correct response to a certain stimuli. Cognitivism involves the mind. The mind categorizes data, it files it away, it makes connections, it stores it, and it develops ways to retrieve that information when it's necessary. As a teacher, the cognitivist approach would kind of indicate how you scaffold information and how you present it to the students in a way that's not going to overload their cognitive systems. Where cognitivism is more in the way a teacher might explain information or in the way a student might organize information, cognitive constructivism is more in the way that the student constructs knowledge cognitively. So the teacher would not really explain a process, but might provide a task-based learning or problems or guided learning in such a way where the student is actually to take what he or she already knows, apply it to some new context or apply it to some new way, and develop knowledge that they didn't have before. Social constructivism involves learning on the social level. Students working together or people working together to construct knowledge about something. And also, some knowledge can only be learned in a social environment. Language, you can study vocabulary and grammar from a book, but you can never really learn how to use language unless you learn how that society uses language. or other things like the importance of time. Time really has no meaning in and of itself unless your society puts some meaning to it, and that can only be learned socially. But what is knowledge, and how do we learn it? Some knowledge is just out there waiting to be understood or waiting to be discovered. The instructions on this golden record are written in science. Something like riding a bicycle, you could understand it cognitively, but unless you practice physically, you'll never be able to ride a bicycle. And two pairs of sticks, in one culture it could be a way to eat food, and in another it's just a way to put up your hair. But in writing that essay, I came full circle back to behaviorism. I'm learning cognitively in this course, I'm learning constructively in this course, and I'm submitting assignments for grades and things which are the behaviorist aspect of any kind of formal learning. Why am I doing it all? Why am I pushing myself to study these things, to learn these things? What is my end goal? And I think that's because of some desired consequence I have for completing this process, earning the doctorate, and seeing what the future will bring from there. So the reason behind it all is a behavioristic one. With prompt 2B, I think the description of the module I was teaching in my class, I kind of came to my own realization about how much I've internalized all the learning I've done over the last 2 years, and how I make use of these different theories regularly with almost any lesson that I teach. With the articles given up for critical analyses, I always wonder if they're superb examples or the total opposite. I chose these two because they both seem interesting to me based on the titles. With the Radasolar and Pace article, I found it interesting, but in these kinds of cases, I think how I might try to do it. In this case, I think they had too many participants for the amount of data they were able to present in this paper. Also, their conclusions seem to be way overstated over the information they got from expanding this kind of volunteer reaching out because the job isn't providing enough support to requiring students to do the same kinds of activities, hoping that it will lead to the same kind of results, seemed like a bit of a stretch for me. With the Niederhauser article, I had some problems with the statistics, and I had some bigger problems with the choice of subjects used to validate the instrument. But more than that, it kind of leads me into my research question coming up about clarity and what is meant in using instructional technology. So the example of using instructional technology in the classroom will increase my effectiveness as a teacher doesn't really inform on how that technology is going to be used. And that's where I'm looking for as to my research question. Throughout the first year and a half of my march to this stage of the program, I was sure that my area of specialization was going to be MAL. It's only very recently that my focus has shifted to an overall adoption of technology and how that technology can be used to facilitate learning. In my context, that leads me to my research question of, in what ways do Japanese university professors make use of ICT in their teaching? My sub-questions relate to how pedagogical beliefs influence ICT usage, and to the kind of FD that is more effective in inducing constructivist teaching and the adoption of ICT in university lessons in Japan. In my experience, most Japanese teachers have transmissive ideas about pedagogy. So I wonder if that's a result of a lack in knowledge of different pedagogical strategies, or if it's cultural inertia from the Confucian ideals that have been a part of Japan for thousands of years. That's why I believe Zaltman and Duncan's strategies for planned change is a change model that looks at assorted cultural and social barriers that might impact change. Is Japanese culture a barrier on ICT use in Japanese university? And can adoption be induced through FD? And if FD, is it on technological content knowledge or FD on pedagogy? Which one would have more impact? With this stance, I acknowledge my own bias in thinking that constructivist techniques would help facilitate learning more than the transmissive nature I usually see in Japan. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I look forward to your comments.